I was standing in a pharmacy in Melbourne, my first week living there, and I asked the woman behind the counter if she had any rubber. I needed an eraser. I was filling out a customs form in pencil and had botched my address. She stared at me, then she started laughing. I did not understand why for another 3 days when a co-worker explained that in Australia, a rubber is an eraser, but I had just walked into what Australians call a chemist, not a pharmacy, and asked for what Americans understand as a condom, with full eye contact. That moment cracked open something I had never considered. Australian English and American English are supposedly the same language, but the same word can send you to completely different mental places. Linguists call these intralingual false friends, words that look and sound identical across dialects but carry opposite meanings. And the gaps are not subtle, they are the kind that get you laughed out of a shop.
In Australia, thongs are flip-flop sandals, a flat rubber sole, a Y-shaped strap between the first and second toes. Standard beachwear since the 1960s. You wear them to the beach, you wear them to a barbie, you wear them to the servo to grab milk. In America, thongs are underwear, the kind with minimal fabric. So when an Australian says I left my thongs at the front door, the mental image diverges dramatically depending on which side of the Pacific you grew up on. Then there is root. This one has ruined friendships. In America, you root for your team. Go team. In Australia, root is slang for sexual intercourse. Full stop. A New Zealand expat named Libert learned this the hard way when he told a friend applying for a job that he and his Kiwi girlfriend were rooting for him. The silence that followed could have filled a stadium. Fanny is another one. In the United States, fanny is about as mild as it gets. Parents say it to toddlers. Fanny pack. Sit on your fanny. In Australia and the United Kingdom, fanny refers to female genitalia. It became vulgar slang in England and Australia in the 1920s, and it stayed that way. British English and Australian English converge here in a way that leaves Americans entirely off the map. This is why what Americans call a fanny pack, Australians call a bum bag. The alternative would be genuinely obscene. Tell an American you want a Barbie and they picture a Mattel fashion doll, 11.5 inches tall, launched in 1959. Tell an Australian and they are already mentally seasoning steaks. Barbie is short for barbecue, and it is not casual slang. It is mainstream vocabulary. Hosting a Barbie is a core social ritual, the kind of gathering Pam Peters, Professor Emeritus of Linguistics at Macquarie University, would point to as proof that Australian English prizes informality as a form of connection. As she puts it, the shortening says to the other person, we're on the same level. Susan Butler, who edited the Macquarie Dictionary for decades, has made a similar observation, that this compression of words, what some linguists call strine, is not laziness but a deliberate social signal. It is how Australian English marks its own territory. Stuffed means full from eating if you are American. Thanksgiving dinner can't move. I'm stuffed. Australians use it for tired, broken, or in serious trouble. Your car broke down. It's stuffed. You forgot your anniversary. Mate, you're stuffed. It also works as a polite stand-in for a much stronger 4-letter word. Get stuffed is not an invitation to eat more turkey. Order an entree in Sydney and you will receive a small appetizer. Order one in Chicago and you will receive the main course. The French word originally meant the opening dish, and most of the English-speaking world kept it that way. British English kept it that way too. America did not. Nobody is entirely sure why American restaurants flipped the meaning, but the result is that Australian tourists in the States order what they think is a starter and receive a 12-ounce ribeye. Tea in America is a beverage, full stop. In Australia, tea can also mean the evening meal. What's for tea does not mean which blend are we steeping, it means what's for dinner. You can, in theory, drink tea at tea. The sentence makes perfect sense in Melbourne. It makes no sense in Milwaukee. Here is what gets interesting about all of this. These are not obscure words. They are not regional dialect terms that only show up in one particular town.
Thongs, tea, stuffed. These are everyday vocabulary for over 25 million Australians. According to the Australian National Dictionary Centre at ANU, their 2023 report found that over 80% of Australians regularly use slang in daily conversation. This is not a fringe behaviour. And the Macquarie Dictionary, first published in 1981 and edited for many of those years by Susan Butler, now carries over 240,000 definitions, cataloguing exactly this kind of language. The team behind that first edition expected to sell 50,000 copies in the first year. They sold that many in 3 months. Australians wanted their own words taken seriously. They still do. Tell an American you are pissed and they will ask who made you angry. Tell an Australian and they will ask how many drinks you had. Pissed means drunk, not annoyed, not frustrated, intoxicated. Interestingly, British English lands on the same side as Australian here. Pissed means drunk in London too. It is American English that is the outlier in that particular triangle. Back to chemist. In America, a chemist works in a laboratory. Beakers. Periodic table. In Australia, the chemist is where you fill your prescriptions. It is the pharmacy. This is why I got laughed at in Melbourne. I walked into a chemist and asked for a rubber. 2 vocabulary gaps colliding at once. Americans use hottie to describe an attractive person. Australians also use it that way sometimes, but it has an older, much more domestic meaning. A hottie is a hot water bottle, the kind you tuck into your bed on a cold winter night. So when an Australian says, "Have you seen my hottie?" they might just be looking under the duvet. In America, a lolly is a lollipop. In Australia, lollies means all candy. Gummy snakes, chocolate bars, hard sweets, everything. Walk into a shop in Brisbane and ask for candy, and you might get a blank look. Ask for lollies and you will be pointed toward the right aisle. Ask an American about Chewie, and they will immediately think of a 7-foot-tall Wookiee from Star Wars. Ask an Australian for some Chewie, and they will hand you a stick of chewing gum. The Venn diagram of these 2 meanings is 2 circles on opposite sides of the page. In America, a cactus is a spiny desert plant. In Australia, cactus means broken, done, kaput. The lawnmower's cactus. I'm cactus. The car, the appliance, the human being. All can be cactus. The plant has nothing to do with it. An American bench is something you sit on in a park. An Australian bench is a kitchen countertop. One cafe worker from overseas described their confusion when a boss told them to clean the bench. They started wiping down the seating area. The boss pointed at the counter. No, the bench. 2 people speaking English. 2 completely different pieces of furniture. In America, PowerPoint is presentation software made by Microsoft. In Australia, a PowerPoint is a wall outlet, an electrical socket. So if your Australian colleague says they are looking for a PowerPoint, they might just need to charge their laptop, not review your quarterly slides. What holds all of this together is something Professor Manning Clark said back in 1981, when the Macquarie Dictionary first landed. We've always had our own pronunciations since about the 1820s and 1830s. For nearly 100 years we've apologised for it. Those divergences trace back to the First Fleet era, convict era, English mixing with Irish, Cockney rhyming slang, and the linguistic reality of a continent adapting words to entirely new conditions. He stopped apologising. The dictionary sold 50,000 copies in 12 weeks. I think about that sometimes. Standing in that Melbourne chemist, asking for a rubber with the confidence of a man who believed English was English everywhere. The woman behind the counter did eventually hand me an eraser, but she told the story to her co-worker first. I heard them both laughing as I walked out.